Have you guys seen that new documentary on Hulu? It's called Devil in the Family. It's about 8 passengers, or Ruby Franke and her family, and what she did to them. Well, Ruby Franke's son, Chad, and her husband have been speaking out after the documentary release. If you haven't seen it, it's actually quite interesting. If you're familiar with the case, in the first 45 minutes are really a recap of a lot of things you know, but towards the end, there's a lot of unseen footage at the end of episode 1 and into episode 2. Oh my god, the Jodi Hildebrandt exorcism was crazy. We gotta talk about that sometime. But that documentary is out, and in it, her now estranged husband talks a lot about Ruby's behavior. And before we watch this video, some of you guys have seen it, some of you haven't, but one thing that I feel like I noticed in this is Kevin, Ruby's estranged husband, he was raised extremely religious. Religion was his whole life, and it seems like he was prone to religious delusions in a way, spiritual delusions, things about demons and things that he thought was happening. And I believe, after watching that documentary, that Kevin Franke really believed these things. And the thing was, Ruby was using, the book and Jesus and demons and all these spiritual things to scare Kevin. So much so that she kicked him out of the house by convincing him that he was bringing demons into the home. And so he left in order to save his family. So I want you to know that about Kevin before we watch this. I'll tell you right now, he was not there for his kids, even if he was prone to these religious delusion things. Yo, think about how many dads would have busted their kids out of there, okay? I know a lot of y'all are that mom or you're that dad, but this is Kevin. This is Kevin. All right, let's see what they say after the doc.
This tragedy isn't something that you can just put easy and clean labels on. It's a very complex story.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door. He's got duct taped around each ankle. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Franke, how do you plead to count one?
Can I just say, when I actually watched the documentary and I saw that clip back, I've seen that video before, and I've watched it with you guys and on stream. We're doing our thing. Bro, when I watched that again in the documentary, I cried. I sure diddly do I did. Because I never really saw the footage alone, and it was hard.
1 child abuse.
Guilty.
To count 3 child abuse.
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children. Guilty.
A lot of the physical violence that was described was hidden and kept from me. I didn't even know that those things happened. And I think Ruby was really careful to hide a lot of that from me. As far as the things like sleeping on a beanbag, removing Chad from sports teams and things, all of those directives came from Jodi, the licensed.
Okay. I still believe the spiritual delusion part. However, this is just blame shifting. So many dads would not have let this happen. So many. Okay. He claims he didn't see anything.
Mental health counselor. I definitely voiced my opposition and concern. And it was always flipped back onto me of saying, well, this is why your children are disobedient. This is why you're having problems with your children, because you just enable them all the time. You're the problem, Kevin.
When you work
Now, also, if you haven't seen the doc, you find out during that Jodi Hildebrandt was actually originally Chad's therapist. Chad was having some issues in school, probably because his mom was publicizing his entire life and any private thing that he ever did, and she was putting it in the thumbnail, and he had to still go to school every day. It wasn't cool that he was famous. It's embarrassing, okay? So Chad starts having issues in school, like skipping, not wanting to be there, whatnot. So they say, we need to get him a counselor, along with trying to send him to military school and wilderness camps and all this messed up. But that counselor was Jodi Hildebrandt. So she really got her roots in by working with Chad for a couple years and worked her way up to Ruby.
When you work with a licensed therapist who is giving you advice, and you've trusted her for 5 years, and at first it was great advice, and I felt like she did a really good job with me. But when you build a relationship for 5 years, and when it gets to the point where your mom also trusts her.
This look like y'all dating. Ruby, Jodi looked like Ruby's man in this, but she looked more like Ruby's man than Kevin do.
More than she trusts her husband. For my dad, I understand that, in order to get his family back and to not run into problems with my mom and our therapist, he had to obey her rules and follow each step.
I think it's relatively easy for somebody out there who's, armchairing this and looking at this experience going, well, why didn't he just do that? I would have done that. If, it.
Yes, we are saying that, Kevin. We are pointing out ways that we would have been better parents. I mean, I'm sorry, you put your life on the internet 10 years ago. Would you want it to stop now because you in a criminal trial? In fact, I think this is when we should be talking the most.
It was day number 1, and Jodi came to me and said, yeah, you're selfish. You need to go into separation and repent. I would have told her to take a hike.
Yeah.
I would have been like, you're crazy. And I did. I did say that in the first time I was introduced to Jodi's program. But you have to remember, and these individuals have to remember, that this was now, I was 2.5 years in this program now, and Jodi doesn't start from day one saying stuff like that. She gets her hooks into you and slowly begins to indoctrinate you and condition you to believe things about yourself.
Yeah, and you were predisposed to that because you were raised in a highly religious environment. So you just repeated your trauma pattern. She did it all over again, and you still don't see it, which means it's probably going to happen again.
You and condition you to believe things about yourself and to willingly give power to other people because you come to believe that you yourself aren't capable of making good decisions. When that was
why
suggested
Chad
to
look
me
at him like
after
that?
all of that,
Wait, did you guys see the way Chad looked at him when he said that?
believe that you yourself aren't capable of making good decisions. When that was suggested to me after all of that indoctrinating and conditioning,
Graceful
at the
side eye.
time, it seemed like, oh, you're right. Okay. But, again, I understand for somebody who wasn't in it that it would seem strange. There was that coercion and flipping it back onto me, the gaslighting, that I was like, okay, well, maybe I am wrong. Maybe this is the right way to parent.
Maybe. We got a whole Hulu documentary, and you're still at maybe.
But
Maybe.
I know that there's a lot of sentiment out there, and I think I want to address this very directly and very clearly. One of the things that I've been so upset about with the
I'm
popular
staring at Chad.
media's narrative of this experience is how they've collapsed the timeline, and they've taken the events of 2023, which were criminal, which were atrocious and horrific,
Okay.
and they've just smashed them all the way back into previous years.
Yeah, it's a slow progress into a federal crime. And we're just looking at all the pieces, and you were involved. And even when you weren't there in 2023, you were involved because they were your children, and you just f***ing sat on a bed in a hotel room failing your kids.
And smash them
Also,
all the way
let
back
Chad
into
talk.
previous years.
Wow, this is bad.
And extrapolated and assumed that those types of criminal activities were occurring years before Jodi entered our family, and that's just simply not true. The criminal physical stuff
Yeah.
happened after Jodi came into the picture, and the severe and the strict consequences and outcomes came after Jodi
No.
came into the picture.
There was already
Ruby
early.
herself, though, was throughout our marriage, she took a very strict stance when it came to parenting.
Yeah.
And I think
I was about to say, he actually verbalizes it, but you can see the slightest head nod in him when his dad actually acknowledges that she was overly strict. Dude, if you watch that documentary, you can just see like all the like super narc patterns in all of it. Like Ruby thinks that she's never wrong. It's everybody else's fault. Everybody else should be helping her, and everyone else needs to do better. And if she ever thinks that she did do something wrong, then she doesn't acknowledge it. She just goes to God. Like, that's it. That's like her MO. Like, it's literally like a religious narc mom is an incredibly painful experience because they make you believe that they are right and they are holy and they are just, and you have nothing else to compare it to.
Throughout our marriage, she took a very strict stance when it came to parenting.
Yeah.
And I think she learned a lot of that from her own parents and her own family.
Yeah, we
The
all learn
rules, the
traits from our
boundaries of
family.
the separation were completely defined by my former wife, Ruby, and by Jodi. What made it difficult was, they could cross the boundary anytime they wanted to, and that was okay. That was, quote unquote, in truth. But if I were to seek, even attempt to cross that boundary, that was an evidence that I was being selfish, that I was unsafe, and that likely my marriage would have ended. Well, Ruby had
And he
a
was
few
attached to
communications
Ruby.
with me. I don't recall anymore the exact number of times, but it was always around logistics. Some neighbors and things and early on in the separation would reach out when they started to realize, like, whoa, like, what are you doing? As I'm sure Chad can share his perspective as well. We were both really indoctrinated that we needed complete isolation in order to heal. And
Hey, this really is the thing, okay? Ruby Franke's family, it's giving cult vibes, and she's the cult leader, okay? Like, I think we can all agree that's kind of what it feels like. If you've watched a lot of documentaries on cults, or you've seen a lot of them, like how they work, I love cult documentaries. I think it's so interesting. My final takeaway from all of those things is always, if you do something bad in a cult, you are still liable for it after you leave the cult, especially because the shit that people be getting forced to do in cults, it gets real murky. And there's usually a pattern where you see for a while other people leaving, other people saying no, other people doing things, but you make a choice to stay because you want to belong so badly that you turn a blind eye to all of these bad things happening, all the things the cult leader is doing, and you do what you have to do to survive in there. It gets to a point where that's a choice, and I do believe you were under control. I do believe you were manipulated, but you gotta take the heat for that one. What you do in a cult environment is on you, especially when everyone's asking for help, and especially when those people are your children. So, it's so funny. I actually, in the beginning of this, I was lobbing Kevin a soft ball, and now I'm keeping my ball, dude. Give my ball back.
That complete isolation in order to heal. And that if we were interacting with anybody that was contrary to the messaging that Jodi, the other men in Connections, and Ruby wanted us to accept and ingest, then we were being selfish.
I was also required to move out of the house and never contact my siblings, never go back home. So
he was asked to not only leave the house, but to never contact his siblings again. What is that? It is a punishment. It is a punishment. That's what that is. You don't want to follow my rules? Then you're shut out of the whole family. Who else does that? Religious cults.
Never contact my siblings, never go back home. So It's funny because a couple people did reach out. You know, a
Yep.
neighbor saw me riding my bike to school and to work, and you know, she felt so bad because she realized I was a minor. I was 17, out living on my own, and so she offered to buy me a car. And you know, I really wanted to take that up, but Jodi, who's my therapist and I trusted and loved, you know, at that point, she wanted me to live a very physical, straining and mental straining life while I was out there. That was her
Punishment.
mindset when it came to repentance and changing, is put yourself through as much pain as possible. So, yeah, that was a really hard year, physically and emotionally, not being able to have any family for that long. And
You know, it's also really disturbing. What he's talking about, I believe, was them making him go to the wilderness school. I know they threatened sending him to the military school. I'm not quite sure if they did. But, you know, it's also really disturbing to me that they told Chad, you need to go through this physical pain. You need to go through this work. You need to do this. You need to keep your head down. You need to do all of these things. And they're going to be very hard. And he did them, and they were horrible. And they did that to him as a punishment for not going along with everything that they said. If you do not agree with us and do this, then you will be punished, right? Well, after he completes the arduous physical and mentally and physically stressful thing, what do they say to him after, guys? Good job. You did so great. You've grown so much. We're so proud of you. They literally punish him under the guise of treatment, and it's sadistic punishment. And then they get to be in control again and omnipotent. Good job. You did such a wonderful job. We're so happy you're home. But don't mess up again, because next time it'll be even worse. But we're so happy that you're here. By the way, I'm religious and God loves me, so don't fuck up. Like, literally, that's what they were doing to these kids. And it's such a mind when your parent is treating you horribly, but everybody else thinks that they're a really nice person. That will fuck you up for life, man.
physically through as much pain as possible. So, yeah, that was a really hard year, physically and emotionally, not being able to have any family for that long and no contact at all. And
That right there, what Chad just expressed, is the common theme in these separations that Jodi recommends and that she would.
Even there, Kevin is using language where he is still defending Jodi and Ruby. Even now, the softball language he uses towards Jodi, honey, you should be ripping this to shreds, okay? Especially in front of your son. You weren't there for him before. The best thing you can do for him now is to get mad for him. You know how good it feels when somebody gets mad for you, when you can't be mad for yourself? It makes the other person feel like, yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, this was horrible. But he uses language that defends Jodi Hildebrandt, who literally mind his son for years and years. And these communications that Jodi was having, or these separations, they're not separations. They are exiles and punishment to you and the children. People are thick. They are thick.
Separations that Jodi is the common theme in these separations that Jodi recommends and that she would.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex. And possibly per Sherry Franke, allegedly, and Jodi might have f***ed your wife. Like, I'm being so serious here. I know I'm probably not even supposed to say that, but like, dude, how far down the rabbit hole do you have to be that this person stole your wife, kicked you out of the house, abused your kids, and you're still these separations that Jodi recommends? Dude, grow balls.
Right there, what Chad just expressed is the common theme in these separations that Jodi recommends and that she would tell us to do as her treatment. She insisted that we subject ourselves to pain and discomfort, and in pain and discomfort would be what
She's a
would
sadist.
change us, what would
Jodi Hildebrandt is a sadist. She's a sadist, for sure.
make us stronger. This documentary is an excellent project that will give people a much closer view of the real story. But even the documentary can only cover so much in 3 episodes. There's much more that I hope to share in the future and help people understand about this experience. A lot of people will look at me and say, how could he
What? How? Okay, wait. Yeah, let me.
understand about this experience? A lot of people will look at me and say, how could he ever do that? I would never do that. But, for those who respectfully ask me about that and say, how could you?
How could you?
My response to that is, well, who do you love more than anybody? And sometimes it's a child, sometimes it's a spouse, they say. And I say, well...
You can see Chad's discomfort while his dad sits here and acts like this. You can tell I had to censor myself. Look at how uncomfortable Chad is.
Response to that is, well, who do you love more than anybody? And sometimes it's a child, sometimes it's a spouse, they say. And I say, well,
he had to move.
What would happen if
straighten
that
out.
individual that you love more than anybody started to go a different way and was inviting you and encouraging you? Would you just easily be able to let them go, easily be able to say, you're out of my life, goodbye? And that really gets people thinking.
Did that get you thinking? Did it work on you? Because I don't know what the he's talking about. I don't know who he loves. I don't know. It's not doing anything for me. My two little brain cells are rubbing together and nothing's changing. We're not going to finish this whole video. I'm going to tell you that right now. Unless Chad start talking, I got to go.
And so, I want people to really think about that. Another thing that I hope people think about after watching this is the role that social media and the internet plays in our lives today.
You guys were YouTubers.
And how it really fanned the flames of this story and spread it like
because everyone found out what you did.
The truths and the falsities of it. The dangers that can come when you place yourself or your family or your children into the public spotlight on social media. There's a lot of incentives out there today to do that. But, I hope that people really stop and recognize, is this really what's best?
Wow. I like that his brain just goes to, well, if it wasn't for the internet, this would just be a normal child abuse case where, 8 children were abused. It would just be that if it wasn't for the internet, but all these people have opinions. Well, one, it is a child abuse case that was caught on camera when one of the children escaped. Baby, even if y'all weren't YouTubers, I think it might be national news. That's how bad it was. I really think chat, do you guys think that this might have been national news even if they were not YouTubers? 1 in the chat if you think it would be. 2 in the chat if you think maybe not. Yeah. So that right there should tell you, Kevin, it really is that bad.